Hello and welcome to episode 160 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. My good friend Gillian is going to be on the show today, and the two of us are going to talk about Walt Disney World annual passes. For a lot of people, they may be worth the price, but I want you to know what you're getting into if you decide to join the club. Before we get started, do me a favor and make sure you're subscribed to the Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty YouTube channel. My wife Courtney and I are just wrapping up a move to a new house, and I'm setting up the new home studio to be better than anything I've had to this point. There's a lot of big stuff on the horizon. March is coming up in a little over a week, and that means busy theme parks and spring training baseball. My co-hosts, Sarah Says and Maz, are working with me on a show that's going to air every month for the second half of the year. You will want to be subscribed to the channel. Right now, let's welcome Gillian to the show. Thanks for being here, G.
Thank you for having me.
So we are going to talk about annual passes today and cover a bunch of different topics when it comes to Walt Disney World APs. First of all, as in-state residents, we both get to have different levels than people who live out of state. We'll talk about them in just a little bit. So the two of us both have the Pirate Pass, which means we have blackout dates, more blackout dates than the Sorcerer Pass, but we don't have the Pixie Dust Pass, which limits you to basically weekdays. You don't really get to go to the parks very often at all. With the Pixie Dust Pass, obviously with you living a few hours away from the parks, even further than I live, explain why you can't do the Pixie Dust Pass where you can't go on weekends.
Because I'm only available to go on the weekends unless I take time off from work. Like I only have so much PTO, and a lot of my trips are condensed into either an extended weekend like Friday, Saturday, or Sunday where I get off a little early or take the Friday or the Monday off, or it's just condensed to the Saturday and Sunday time that I need my time off from work to get up there and get back home.
Yes, my wife Courtney also has to do the Pirate Pass because the majority of her park time is spent on the weekends as well. It would be really great to live in a world where we could all go during the week, but I guess if that were the case, then the week would be busy as well, and we wouldn't have this option anyway. But the Pixie Dust Pass is only good for a few select people. Like, I have a friend who's a nurse, so she has a very changeable, adaptable, fluid schedule. So she's able to have the Pixie Dust Pass because she doesn't want to go on the weekends if she can go during the week.
But she's also a local, right?
She's fairly local, yeah. It's close enough that she can go. Like, I'm close enough that I can go and return in the same day. You aren't.
Yeah, in my younger days I was. I can't do it anymore.
Right, I guess you theoretically could do it, but it wouldn't be very advantageous. So we're in that second tier from the bottom. We don't have the major pass. We don't even have that second level pass. Now, one of the things I like since having dropped down to the Pirate Pass is the times where we have blackout dates, I wouldn't even want to be in the parks anyway.
Oh yeah, it's the summer, like it's the hottest days, or the holiday, it's the busiest. It's the busiest time on the your Christmas, your Thanksgiving. Everyone's out of school, everyone's out of work. Like, you don't want to go there anyway.
I was looking at wait times even after New Year's, like still in the first week of January this year, and Smuggler's Run was at like 300 minutes, and that's Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, which isn't even that popular of a ride, was at 300 minutes. Some of the crowds are starting to hit pre-pandemic levels at Walt Disney World, especially this past holiday season. So not having to worry about going to the parks during that time to make your pass quote unquote worth it. Like, when I had the pass with no blackout dates, I felt to make it worth it, I had to go the the week of Christmas. I had to go on Thanksgiving. I had to go a lot of times and get my money's worth, because if Courtney was blacked out for that day, then I knew I was paying more for my pass, so I should be going at those times. And they were always miserable. It was always packed. Like spring break, 4th of July, these times are just, there's a reason there's a blackout date. I guess that's basically all I'm saying. But another advantage that we have as in-state residents with a pass is we get the payment plan. This wasn't something that I took advantage of until very recently, but I do think I like it. I like the fact that you are able to sort of pay it like a monthly bill. And then instead of having it be almost $1,000 every September, now it's $60, $70 a month, somewhere around there. And that makes it a lot more affordable in the long run. And it's not like you're getting a loan or something. Like, you don't pay any interest. You pay the exact amount of money for the pass. Just you have a payment plan, which is very, very helpful.
I'm surprised. I didn't know that you weren't using the payment plan. I've been using the payment plan ever since it was introduced, and I it's the only way. Honestly, at this point, it's the only way I can afford keeping my pass. Yeah, it's very beneficial to me for my personal reasons. Yeah.
I mean, I think for everybody's reasons, everybody likes to do things differently. And, depending on what your situation is like at the time, sometimes, when we first moved here, we had saved up a bunch of money to move. So we still had a little bit of money left over. And we were like, well, instead of paying every month, let's just pay it outright. But then as you start to live in inflation and groceries and all that stuff, after a few years, it started to make more sense to flip over to the payment plan. Now, there are a lot of benefits, and this is where I want to start talking about this, because these benefits are going to apply to people in state, but also vacationers who might be interested in getting an annual pass. And I think the biggest, best advantage of the annual pass, beyond obviously access to the parks, is free parking. Because this is a big deal. They're starting to get up to $30 or $25, $30 to park at the parks. I guess I'm spoiled. I don't even know what they're charging right now.
I think it's over 30. When me and mom were there in December, I remember mom exclaiming at the sign when we were pulling up to scan in.
Right. I remember going in the 80s when it was free to park there.
Yeah.
But now it is expensive to park at theme parks. So if you were coming from out of state, but even somebody like Gillian who's in state, but you're always coming up and staying off property. You don't stay in the Walt Disney World hotels. So you are parking at the parks every day when you're visiting. That is saving you a substantial amount of money. If every day you go to the parks, you save $30, that's immense.
Yeah. Yeah, I never thought of it that way, and it's a really good point that you bring up. I mean, I do of course know, what I'm saving with the free parking, but when you frame it that way, that's it. It's good for me, especially with my budget.
Now, there's also the benefit if you're living out of state, living in state, but have to get a hotel, where the annual passes also come with discounts on Walt Disney World hotels. So you are saving one way or another to get a hotel and visit the parks, whether you're parking for free at the resort and paying a discounted rate for that resort, or you're staying off property, saving even more money, and then getting to park for free. And I know that we wax poetic about Magical Express, which used to take people from the airport right to Walt Disney World property, and it was free. And a lot of people like to be in the Disney bubble and not have access to a car. But I find it is nice to have access to a car when you're at Disney, because if you want to go to a grocery store and save a little extra money that way, having a car is a benefit. And if you can save on these parking fees, that's going to make a Walt Disney World vacation much, much more affordable. And I do think a lot of people, when they're making the decision about an annual pass, obviously the only reason you're going to do it is if it is economically beneficial for you. So you have to be visiting the parks a lot, first of all, but you have to look at these other areas where you're saving money. For example, you and your mother have decided that after years and years of going to the parks, you're going to try to start visiting some of these restaurants you've heard about for years and never visited. So every time you do that, you're saving money with the annual pass holder discount on food. And I think that's really been a big part of the way the two of you visit nowadays.
Yeah, we try each time we get up here, which is usually around once a month, or every other month, to pick out one of the restaurants on property or in a resort. Although I don't think we've made it to any on in the resorts yet. But we try to find, on the app, one of the restaurants that we haven't been to yet and get reservations there. And of course, check for that discount.
And that gives you the opportunity where you are an annual pass holder and you're trying to get your money's worth by coming to the parks maybe more than you would in the past. Well, some people think we just ride Haunted Mansion, you know, 25 times a year if we're visiting Magic Kingdom 25 times a year, but that's really not what we're doing. We're trying to get more experiences that we wouldn't get to do if we were just vacationing, if we were just here 1 week a year and we wanted to cross everything off of our checklist. So going to some of those restaurants, exploring the parks in a more relaxed way, those are all benefits of having the AP. And I did want to mention there was a resort restaurant that I remember you telling me you visited. Wasn't it Olivia's over at Old Key West?
Yeah, we went there for brunch, I think last year. Yeah, but that was a great time over there. The theming, the menu, yeah, you're right. It was on resort property. What resort is that? I can't even remember.
Old Key West.
Oh yeah, okay. So cuz like we never go to the hotels again, but yeah, that was a great brunch that we had over there.
Yeah, just back on Christmas because our passes were blacked out. Courtney and I went to Toledo, which is at the Caribbean Beach Resort at the top of Grand Destino Tower. And we decided that because it was Christmas, we were going to splurge a little bit. And we were able to try a bunch of the different sides. Actually, we tried so many sides that while I went to the restroom, the waiter came up to Courtney and was like, "Do you realize that the sides aren't free?"
Oh
We're like, "Yes, we realized that the sides weren't free." We just wanted to try everything and we got that discount. So some of these restaurants are pricey. And if you want to experience them and one member of your party has an annual pass, I think you're able to pay for you and I forget if it's 3 people. I know that there is a limit to how many people can be paid for by one annual pass, but it saves substantial amounts of money at these restaurants and gives somebody a chance to try things that maybe they wouldn't have tried before. Now, do you come up once a month more because that's just how much you want to experience the parks? Or is that something where you feel like you have to visit X amount to get your money's worth out of the pass?
I mean, to be honest, I've been doing it this way. I mean, since before I met you. I've been making it up here at least once a month, maybe every other month. I've been doing that for years. That's why I've kept the pass that I've had. and kept the pirate pass because it was as closest to the previous pass system before that went down right before COVID, because it allowed me to keep the maintain the lifestyle that I'm currently living. I guess you could, the Disney lifestyle I'm currently maintaining. Um I mean, that's why I have the pass that I have, because it still allows me to keep the schedule, I guess, or the amount of times that I usually visit, which is once a month, and a lot of the times more than once a month.
And since you have lived in Florida all your life, have you always just been an annual pass holder? Has that been the only way you've experienced the parks, or is that a newer thing for you?
I've been an annual pass holder since my 30s. It's been over a decade that I've been an annual pass holder, and then I think I had an annual pass for a few years in my 20s. Before that, it was, my parents just taking us on the annual vacation once a year, from like ages 3 to like 17.
Okay, awesome.
But
That's actually getting to my point here, because you do have that memory of having the Disney trip be your once a year vacation, where maybe you felt you had to do Haunted Mansion every time you were at Magic Kingdom, and you had to do everything that you wanted because you knew it had to hold you off for another 12 months. Whereas now, how do you feel like you hit the parks differently?
oh yeah, it's definitely a lot less structured. I mean, my folks were never a huge, itinerary type of people, but still, yeah, it's very more much more casual. I know the attraction isn't going anywhere if we haven't heard it in the news yet. And I can, I'll be back. Like if I don't hit this ride this time, that's fine. I'll be back up here next month. And it's just whatever I feel like doing, or not at all. Like, it's very easy to spend an entire day at a park and not do any rides. Like, I don't know how many people like really realize this, because of you're a local or you're an annual pass holder as opposed to not being one.
Especially Epcot. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But I do find that when I first got my AP, like I remember the first day I had an annual pass, and Courtney and I had just moved here. She actually sold her car before we moved with the thought that she would just buy a car when she got here. And I was still driving her to work in the mornings, and then driving to Disney, and then driving back to pick her up from work. So I was only spending like maybe 4 hours in the parks. And even those first few weeks, I was, oh, I want to do this ride. I want to do this ride. But then as the weeks turned into months, and then the months eventually turned into years, I find myself coming home at night and Courtney's like, "Oh, what did you ride today?" And I'm like, "You know what? I went to a couple festival booths. Um I did the Ratatouille hide and squeak, where I did the scavenger hunt to find Remy, and I don't think I wrote anything. Gosh darn it. Like, it doesn't even occur to you sometimes to get in these hour-long waits, because Big Thunder Mountain Railroad will be there the next time I'm here, and it'll be a 25-minute wait instead of the hour wait that it is today, so I'll just skip it. And I think I find that where I maybe take too much advantage of that is with the nighttime spectaculars. I feel like I should take the time to see Happily Ever After more. I still haven't even seen the Epcot show that started back in December. So I think that's the only place where I don't get my money's worth out of the pass, because I think, oh, I'll see Happily Ever After next time. But those are impressive shows that they put on each and every night. Do you find that you make the time to see the spectaculars, or do you skip them kind of like I do?
I skip them like you do, and while I wholeheartedly agree that those are amazing shows, and amazing work put in by everyone involved in creating those shows and bringing them to life, we've talked about this before. I'm much more of a ride person or a food person as opposed to a show person. Like if there's a parade or a show or some type of show based attraction that's not a ride, I'm most likely going to put that off, finding other things that are more fun to me, I guess.
Well, I agree with you there too, because a lot of times if I'm at Magic Kingdom at night and Happily Ever After is starting, and I think I could either wait 45 minutes on Main Street to see Happily Ever After, or while it's showing and all the vacationers are lined up on Main Street, I can run around Frontierland and do Big Thunder Mountain and do Haunted Mansion and head over to Pirates and get all of those done while everybody else is watching the fireworks.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know we have also taken advantage of the annual passes in terms of annual pass holder previews. This is something Disney does that I think we consider nice, but I think instead of them considering it nice, they consider it a way to get the annual pass holders out of the way. So when they open these things, we aren't clogging stuff up for other people.
And how does that really work, to
It
be honest?
doesn't work for them because everybody still shows up to their pass holder preview and is there the first day the attraction opens. But I know
Exactly.
we got to do things like Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind before anybody else did it. And that is something very, very special.
Yes, that was a great day, and probably only my second pass holder preview, because that is another thing that I had not either had knowledge of or to be able to take advantage of before.
What was your first one?
Ratatouille.
Okay, Remy's Ratatouille Adventure. I also did that
Yeah.
one, and that was a fun one. That ride, obviously, I think, is starting to settle maybe a little bit into its role, but when these things are new, they have incredibly long lines, even if they are not necessarily an e-ticket attraction, like Remy's is not a main
Yeah.
attraction. It
Yeah.
really shouldn't have our 90-minute waits, but because everybody likes the shiny new thing, it still has that. The one for me that was incredible was I lucked into getting a Galaxy's Edge annual pass holder preview, and we just had 5 hours where we
Mm.
could run around Galaxy's Edge with like nobody there. There were a couple hundred people. I know that they hadn't even opened Rise of the Resistance yet, so the only ride was Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. I think I did it 5 or 6 times during my preview. I was able to walk around, take pictures of everything. I had character interactions with Rey, Vi, the stormtroopers. And then I also went, because it doesn't work out for Disney when they have these plans. I also went the day that Galaxy's Edge opened to the public, and I couldn't move. Like, it was miserable, and I ended up leaving by 9 o'clock. I think they opened Galaxy's Edge at 5 in the morning, and I got funneled on to Smuggler's Run, where I ended up waiting an hour and a half when I was waiting 5 minutes in the preview. And then I got a blue milk, and I was like, you know what? I'm ready to head out of here, because I got to have that special experience with my pass. And then you figure out eventually that being the first person at everything isn't as great as everybody makes it sound.
Yeah, I see. Once again, I never got a notification about such a thing when Galaxy's Edge opened. I was a pass holder then, and I didn't even know that that was a thing that existed. I think that's it was probably you telling me about it is how I found out that's a thing. We get invites to see the new attractions early. I was incredulous. Like I was just, and I'm bummed that I missed that.
I was so worried that I was setting an alarm every half hour, because for some reason I had stayed up. Like I had to do something overnight. I don't remember if I worked overnight or whatever it was, but I knew that starting at around 9 o'clock in the morning, they were going to possibly release these annual pass holder previews. So I set an alarm for every half hour because I was going to be waking up at noon, and every half hour I checked my email, and then probably around 10:30 it was there, and I applied for it and I got it. But you really sometimes have to do the work for it. I missed out on Tron previews. I've missed out on a number of these annual pass holder previews. I got one for the Moana water attraction. It can be kind of hit and miss because a lot of annual pass holders like to sometimes it's not a bad thing, but a lot of times it can be a bad thing. Like it's everybody wanting to just be the first one to have the pictures on their Instagram or the, video on their YouTube channel or whatever. So there is a lot of that like first culture thing, and it can make it hard to get these previews. But when you get them, boy, does it feel special, and does it feel like they're giving you a nice treat. And they usually do them after cast member previews, which is the way it should be, that the cast members get to experience these things before anybody else.
About making you feel special, like, yeah, that's definitely how I felt when we got our Galaxy, Guardians of the Galaxy preview, and then again the agony of defeat when I couldn't get into the Tron because I missed Tron. I got the email and everything, but I couldn't get in to get an actual preview for that, and that was upsetting. But funnily enough, me and Mom got our pass holder preview for Moana, and then we went to the park that day and spent the whole day in the park at Epcot and left and didn't do our preview. We walked out of the park and didn't do the preview at all.
Oh, you forgot about it. That's so funny. I had the same thing with the Tron annual pass holder preview where I was waiting and it was telling you, spots are filling and you're watching Big Thunder Mountain go in circles as it's refreshing. And they're like, don't refresh the page or you'll lose your space in line. And
yeah,
just eventually I lost out on that one, but it's okay. I don't have to be the first one to do absolutely everything. Like, I understand these things are privileges, and I get excited whenever I get the chance to do them. Before I let you go, what I want to talk about a little bit is the decision-making process that would have to go into somebody who didn't live in Florida and whether they were going to get an annual pass. It costs about, this is a rough estimate, $1,400 for an out-of-state person to get an annual pass. Now, they are, by definition, always the Accredit Pass.
Oh, that was going to be my next question. What do they get?
They have to be in Credit Pass, which means no blackout dates. Okay. So your pass is good each and every day of the year. However, they also don't get the payment plan. So if they're going to pay that $1,400, they have to pay it up front when they get the pass. That makes a lot of sense because you don't want somebody getting this pass, going on a 2-week vacation, and then not paying the next month's payment. Because what are they going to do? Take away the vacation you experienced? Like, how are they going to punish you for not making your payment? As annual pass holders who live down here, if we don't pay our next payment, they just don't let us into the parks anymore. But $1,400 at one chunk is a lot. You figure if you're talking about paying roughly $100 a day, and I think that to me would mean a full theme park day. Like not even one of those days where you just go in and ride 1 or 2 rides for an hour and then leave. If I'm making the mental note that this is $100 park day for me, I want to make sure I'm there at least 5, 6, 7 hours.
Yeah, I agree.
So you're talking about like 2 weeks worth of theme park days to make it worth it. Now, you throw in discounts on hotel rooms, you throw in free parking, discounts on dining. Maybe 10 park days a year would make this thing worth it if you were coming in for vacations. So I think the way most people vacation, that's still 2 trips. I think you
Yeah.
have to make at least 2 trips as an out of stater to even consider getting an annual pass.
I mean, me personally, the only thing I can think of is that for an out of state, resident, non-resident to get this pass, you would either have to be living in one of the states, directly connected to Florida, just close enough that it's easy enough for you to get to Orlando as many times as you want to get use out of this pass, or you have to like have a job that guarantees that you will be traveling to Orlando like, a lot out of the 365 days of the year. That to me, like, cuz I don't know, like I've lived here my whole life. I can't, it's hard for me to think outside of that box. To me that's the only two reasons for me as a non-resident to get that pass.
If I were to ever move out of Florida, and I love the parks, so I would probably be coming 2, 3, 4 times a year. I think it would make sense for me to keep my annual pass going, but I would be making sure that this was like every vacation I took, because if I'm paying that much money, it would feel like I was wasting my time if I went to Disneyland. Or if, I guess there's probably other places to go besides theme parks. I don't know. I've never heard. But it does really, really seem like if you are out of state and you're thinking about an annual pass, just remember that while there are some benefits and you think about those benefits, I would say you'd have to come down at least 2 weeks every year to make it worth your while.
What we're really saying is you all need to move to Florida.
Is that what we're saying though? Um, I think that sometimes you can get the sticker shock of a vacation and think, boy, it must be so much cheaper to have an AP.
Mm,
But just do your research, just like with everything else. I mean, when you're trying to figure out which resort, like we mentioned, Gillian doesn't stay on Walt Disney World property. She has found that it's a better allocation of her resources to spend that money in a nice restaurant at Walt Disney World rather than spending it on a fancier place to sleep, because she likes to spend her time in the parks or in the restaurants when she is at Walt Disney World. She's not sitting in her hotel room. So
exactly.
you just make those decisions based on the way you travel. But I thought it would be a good conversation to just sort of break down the annual passes. And I really appreciate your time, Jillian. Thanks for being here again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure.
This has been episode 160 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Next Thursday, we will wrap up February on Leap Day. I will have a conversation with Disney bounder and Instagram influencer Spirit Day Sarah, not to be confused with my co-host Sarah Says. We will talk about a lot of things that impact all of us who try to create theme park content, like feeling awkward videotaping ourselves in public, getting angry comments on social media, and trying to have a purpose and mission beyond just having fun at Disney. Until then, have a great week.